good morning to everybody tuning in today. First of all, I can't believe that it's already July. Time is flying by so fast, especially when you're having fun and working hard. Welcome everybody, welcome. What do I want to talk about to you guys today? So let's start with the fact that I know that we have a lot of frustrated people who are waiting for their loved ones to have interviews at the embassies for their green cards, and some people have had their interviews scheduled even before COVID, and then the interviews got canceled because of COVID, and there has been no action. And some people have started the process during COVID and have just been waiting for an immigrant visa interview. So first of all, I completely understand your frustration. I see it every day, and I just want to tell you that the backlog at the National Visa Center is over 500,000 cases. What does that mean? That means that there are over 500,000 cases, 500,000 cases, where all of the documents have been submitted and accepted by the National Visa Center, and they have been marked as documentarily qualified, and they're just waiting for interviews to be scheduled. The latest statistics is that in the last 2 years, the drop in the immigrant visa issuances, which is where the person is immigrating to the U.S., when they come to the U.S. and become a legal permanent resident, the drop is 80% in the issuances of visa. And for the non-immigrant visas, which is when a person is coming here for a temporary stay, the most common example of which is a tourist visa, the drop in issuances of those visas are 70%, right? So although your frustrations are completely justified, and there shouldn't be any reason right now why there is such a huge backlog, except of course, for some countries where the embassies remain closed, such in India, because of the high spikes of COVID. There are countries around the world that should not be having such huge backlogs. So we're hoping that in the next few months, the situation is going to be improving, and we will be able to start bringing more and more people, especially the ones who've been waiting since early 2020, late 2019. So that is the update on the Department of State backlog information. So after the last time that I saw you guys a week ago, we got a bunch of requests to talk about secondary inspection. That is the issues that come up in secondary inspections. We see them very often in our clients. So let me just walk you step by step. When you are arriving at a port of entry to the United States, such as an airport or a border crossing, or there are places in the world that have designated pre-inspection, for example in Dubai, Aruba, those are the ones that are coming up in my mind, where you are going through the inspections to the U.S. before boarding a plane to the U.S. and when the plane lands here, just get to basically walk out of the airport. Now, first, when you see the CBP officer, Customs and Border Patrol officer, they do the first-hand initial inspection, right? They will check your documents to make sure that you're either a citizen, a green card holder, or that you have a valid document that allows your entry to the U.S. And they will take, for people who are non-citizens, they will take their fingerprints, and they will assess initial eligibility to enter the United States. Now, if there are any problems, any flags, or if the officer, based on totality of circumstances, deems it necessary for the person to be examined more closely, the person will be sent to what's called a secondary inspection. Now, the secondary inspection happens at the airport. You're taken to a separate room, and it can go anywhere from a few minutes to hours and hours and hours. We've had our clients being stuck in secondary inspection, sometimes for 4, 5, 6 hours. Although your rights do not disappear at the secondary inspection, your legal recourses are limited. For example, although you do have the right to request an attorney to be present during the secondary inspection, I'm going to tell you right now, the United States government, the CBP, is going to deny that request. Now, I'm going to talk about things in general, right? Every case is different, but this is generally what happens. If you're a U.S. citizen, you cannot be denied the right to enter the United States. All you have to do at a point of entry, if you're a U.S. citizen, is establish your identity and establish your citizenship by providing documents. You have to answer questions that are related to customs, like if you're bringing any contraband and stuff like that, but you can refuse to answer any other questions, and you cannot be denied the entry to the United States, okay? You're a U.S. citizen, so we have that covered. Number 2, if you are a legal permanent resident, a green card holder, you cannot be denied entry to the U.S. with very limited exceptions. One of them is being criminal activities outside of the United States that can, if you have like a criminal hold or somewhere where you're a wanted person. Other than that, you cannot be denied admission to the U.S. if you're a green card holder. Also, please remember that if you have a green card, only a judge can ultimately take your status away. You don't have to sign anything you don't understand. You can refuse to sign any documents. If you are asked to have access to your phone or other digital devices, you have to understand that you can refuse to give them password, but Customs and Border Protection can there keep your digital devices for inspection, right, and return them to you at a later time. How does that work in terms of searches? Well, let me tell you first about what happens if you're just a holder of a visa to the U.S. You have to understand that a visa allows you to board the plane. The ultimate decision on whether to admit you to the United States happens at a point of entry. If you're sent to secondary inspection, a few things can happen. One, they can ask you a few questions, determine that everything okay, and allow you to enter. Now, if there are any issues, the CBP officer can conduct and will conduct that search for you in their internal databases to see if there's any criminal records, to see if you've had any negative immigration history, if you've previously entered with someone else's passport or under a different identity, or if you've ever been deported before. What else? Now, they're going to search their internal databases. Besides that, they have the ability to search publicly available information. That means they can search anywhere on the internet. They can search social media, any social media, and they routinely do that. In your immigrant and non-immigrant visas, you are asked to provide your social media names on it, and they will search for any negative content, any publications, any posts, any pictures. We've had many different instances where, based on social media postings, people were denied admission to the United States. 2, they claim the right to inspect your luggage to make sure that you're not bringing any contraband, any prohibited items to the United States, and they claim to have the right to inspect your phone and your other electronic devices such as your laptop, and that happens routinely. Even if you tell them, I'm not giving you the password to my phone, they can keep the phone, and all you can do in that instance that we tell you to do is to please make sure that you take the name, the badge number of the person who's confiscating your electronic device and ask for a receipt. Very routinely during the secondary inspection, the CBP officer will take a sworn statement from you. Now, what is a sworn statement? When you swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, and those statements are routinely asked to be signed. Now, we never encourage anybody to be belligerent or to lie, because obviously that is against the law. It is against the law, against the federal law, to provide untruthful, misleading, and fraudulent information to an immigration official at the point of entry, right? So that is one deterring factor. However, at the same time, you can refuse to provide information. We discourage you from saying, I don't know, if you do know the answer to the questions. But if you feel like you don't want to be answering, for example, questions, you do have the right not to. In terms of signing documents, never ever sign anything you do not fully understand. You can ask for an interpreter. You can ask for a document to be provided to you in the language that you understand. Never initial, never sign anything you do not fully understand. And oftentimes the consequences of what you're signing, you probably will not understand, right? Because how many people are familiar with the concept of expedited removal and what it really is going to mean for their life? Also, if you do decide to sign something, make sure to ask for a copy of it, that you have the notes, right? That you have a record of what it is that you signed. If you did sign something, if the officer took notes, if your devices have been confiscated, there's of course a procedure to access them, but that means it's going to be sometime in the future, because you have to go through certain steps in order to get access to those things. So secondary inspection can be a very unpleasant, and a lot of the times it is. Nobody really wants to have their privacy inspected to that degree. And although you're not waiving any of your rights, constitutional rights do not disappear at the border, the immediate legal recourses are very limited. Now, what can happen? Let's say an issue has been revealed during the secondary inspection. What are your options? Your first option is to always ask to voluntarily withdraw your application for admission. What does that mean? That means that you are telling Department of CBP that you no longer want to be admitted into the United States, and you would like to withdraw that application and be put on a plane and be sent back home. It is not an absolute right. The CBP has to agree to allow you to withdraw your application for admission, and that is going to be based on totality of circumstances on each individual case. if you are granted your application to withdraw, if you're granted the withdrawal of the application for admission, please let the CBP officer know that you're allowing for them to release your electronic devices, if they have been seized, to the airline that is going to be transporting you back home. This way they can release the devices to the staff of the airline, and you can have access to them once you're on board. If you have gone through this process and you are now on the airplane, first thing you should do is you should have a pen and paper and jot down in detail everything you remember. The reason I'm telling you to do it right away is because as time goes by, it is proven fact that your memory is going to fade, things are going to get altered, things can get confusing. You want to make sure you write the name of the officer, how long you've been there, what happened in a sequence of events, if anything was confiscated, and if anything was inspected, if you've signed any documents. Again, you have the right to, even if you sign something, you have the right to ask for a copy of it. And you have the right to refuse to sign any documents. Parole. You can be paroled into the United States. Parole is different than an admission. It allows you to be in the United States for a specific reason, specific amount of time. Parole is very often used when they're going to be asking you to come back for what's called a deferred inspection, which I'm going to touch on a little bit later. And the second one, the one that we deal with the most because it presents the most legal issues, is of course expedited removal. Expedited removal is you are being removed from the United States, and the immediate legal consequences of that is that you have to stay out for 5 years before you can try to come back again. Of course, there are waivers that are available. There are ways to dealing with it and asking for permission to return before the 5 years are up, but expedited removal stays on your record forever and ever. It's going to be associated with your fingerprints. It's never going to go away. It is a removal, right? It is removal from the United States. Now, important things about the Customs and Border Patrol. One, if you're being asked about your religious preferences, your religious beliefs, or your political affiliations, you can reasonably refuse to answer those questions. Remember, constitutional rights do not stop at the border. If you're being asked to remove your religious headgear or like some sort of religious attributes, and if you feel like you're being targeted because of you belonging to a certain religious or political group, you need to make sure you take your notes very carefully, because there is a process by which you can actually complain about unethical, unconstitutional behaviors like that. There are some legal recourses when it comes to that. Please remember that fighting, arguing, obnoxiousness is only going to make the process worse. This is not Starbucks. You're not going to get to call a supervisor and get your latte redone. This is serious. You want to be as cordial, as polite, as reasonably as possible. Obviously, you're frustrated at this point. To preserve your rights and to do the right thing, there's no reason to go into fights or arguing or things along the lines of like, do you know who I am? I've seen that before. Not a great course of action. Now, let's say your devices have been confiscated, or let's say you have signed something, or let's say you have done given a sworn statement and you do not have a copy of it, or let's say that you truly believe that the information that is being presented to you or is being asked of you is based on incorrect facts or inaccurate facts or some sort of a misunderstanding. So first, please understand that the officers are relying on their internal databases, right? And everything they're asking of you, everything, all the paperwork that you're signing, all the sworn statements are going into their internal database. And there's a way to access those records and to request the return of your belongings and request of the return of your devices. There's special procedures for that. If that happened to you, you can definitely give us a call, let us know. If you believe that you have been put into secondary inspections based on inaccurate information in their system, there's a procedure by which you can go about trying to fix that. If you truly believe that that has happened to you, please contact us. We can talk to you about that. They can also seize any money that has been undeclared, and if they find $40,000 on you, they can seize that money. They will give you a voucher, and there's a special procedure by which you can request the money to be returned. You're going to have to establish where the money came from, why they were being transported. There's a whole procedure, but in our experience, large portions of it have been returned once proper procedures have been followed. A lot of information on your criminal background and your previous immigration history is based on your fingerprints. Majority of people who enter in the United States, including green card holders, will be fingerprinted at the border. Those fingerprints are being stored, and because of the digital age, the facial recognition features, the fingerprint features, it is now much easier for them to go back in time and go across the world and across the United States database to check for any negative hits under your identity. It is much harder, although it still happens, to use any type of fraudulent documents, because a lot of those have heightened security now protocols. There's been definitely a big amount of expedited removals and secondary inspections now, in big part because CBP is relying on this internal database, and sometimes it is uncertain whether the officer himself is making a determination that you need to go to secondary inspection, or whether it's the algorithm that is determining that, right? If there's a hit, some sort of a positive hit on your identity. Another thing that I'm going to say is that U.S. citizens are subject to secondary inspection as well. Most likely, if you have some sort of negative criminal history, domestic violence is one of them, and there are open orders of protection, and you're traveling with a family member, you have to be prepared that even if you are a U.S. citizen, you can go to secondary inspection. They can't deny your right to enter the United States once you've established that you and you're a U.S. citizen, but that doesn't mean that they can't question you. If you have gone through the process of secondary inspection, if you're a green card holder, or if you are a alien or person coming in here with a visa, and you have gone through this and it wasn't resolved, then of course, as soon as you're out of there, whether you're on a plane going back home, once you land, or whether you've actually been admitted to the US, contact an experienced immigration attorney like us to go over any negative consequences of that interaction. I know it's a lot of information, and things at the border are always changing. Please, I think I want to finish this by just telling you to please remember that, being polite, being courteous, and being patient oftentimes goes a long way. Most CBP officers are not intentionally trying to ruin your day, so to speak. They're doing their jobs in the way they're trained, but that doesn't excuse unethical and constitutional and bad behavior. there shouldn't be mistreating you based on your ethnicity, your race, your religious, or your political attributions. Oh, I forgot one big item. If you are a person coming in with the visa to the United States and you are in secondary inspection, you do not have the right to see an immigration judge unless, and this is a big exception, if you express a fear of returning to your home country, and then it triggers a whole different process, right? So if you're just coming in and you have a B2 visa and you're in secondary inspection, you cannot demand and say, oh, I want to see a judge before I'm removed from the United States. That is not a right that you have. However, that all changes if you at that point express to an officer and saying, like, I cannot return to my home country because I'm afraid for the following reasons. And we can cover that in one of the next programs. So this is a lot, I know. So the good news is, if any of that was confusing or you want me to elaborate on any of that, please let me know, and I will talk about whatever it is that you want me to talk about. This is obviously for your benefit, and I want you to understand as much as possible this general information. If you want to rewatch this, please join us on YouTube, Cohen and Tucker PC. All the videos that I do are posted within a few days to YouTube, and they stay there so you can rewatch them and watch them at any time. I want you to stay safe, stay happy, stay positive. There's almost no unresolvable situations when it comes to immigration, with obviously certain exceptions. There's a lot of good and positive things that are coming our way that we're very, very excited about. If you have any questions, send us a message here, text us, call us. We're always available. It was great to see everybody, and I hope to see everybody next Thursday at 10 a.m. Enjoy this week, the end of this week.